Hi, my name's Simon Bramwell. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Vantage Academies Trust. We work across the North West, currently 4 schools, 1,200 children. St Simon & Jude's, the lead school, is a national support school, and I've been doing this job for about 24 years now. We're here today talking at the Kyra Teaching School Development Day. I think the process of conversion falls probably into 2 sections. The easy bit were the educational aspects of it, knowing what we wanted to do with the children, having a clear plan. The more difficult part of it was the management and administrative part of it. Partly because we were running ahead of some groups who we needed on board, and we had to get their thinking in line with ours. We're a church-aided MAT, and therefore our PCC, our governors, our diocese all needed to give permission. So we needed to explain in their terms why it would be a good idea for the children of St Simon & Jude's to convert to a single academy in the first place. And certainly in terms of the diocese, we were working ahead of where their policy and process was, and therefore it was a slower process than we'd have liked it to have been. I think also in the DFE, it's the department operates in silos, and each silo has its own time frame and its own set of things that it needs to do, and they don't connect with each other. So we'd have weeks where nothing happened, and then weeks where we were required to fill in 3 or 4 different forms for 3 or 4 different people. And there wasn't anywhere a roadmap laid out of the process. I think that's better now. And the RSC involvement now seems to have consolidated some of those processes so that it's an easier process than we went through. It seemed to be not a battle, but a re-explanation of what we were doing in different contexts time and time again, and it became frustrating. Not necessarily difficult, but frustrating. And some of the things we didn't anticipate, land issues around schools. We found out that the local authority owned half of our year 3 and the diocese owned the other half of year 3, and we had an agreement between those, and those were things that we hadn't anticipated, hadn't come across. And took a little bit more time than we would have liked in moving forward. I think one of the huge challenges in doing this is expanding your responsibility viewpoint from the single academy to a group of academies. You know theoretically that each child is of equal value. You will write that down, but you also have to feel it. And I think the greatest challenge was getting everybody to feel that a child in a Knowsley school, a Manchester school, a Bolton school has equal value and needs our attention equally. And that the governors who originally, the directors and trustees who originally came mainly from our first school, still had an emotional attachment to their first school and needed to let it go. And it's probably taken 18 months for them to do it naturally, as opposed to holding themselves back and saying, we must be equal. And that was a phrase that we used quite a lot early on. We must be equitable between all the schools and all the children. Now, we don't use that phrase so much because we are equitable between the schools. And I think when directors and trustees stop holding themselves back and correcting themselves, you've probably got there. But that took a long time before it became a natural thing for us to do. And that's about hearts and minds, mainly about hearts. But we've got there, and I think now we're fairly clear on that. As a head teacher coming in to join a MAT, then there are a number of insecurities that come out around what's going to happen to me, my role, my independence, my school's independence, how much am I going to lose, how much am I going to gain. When you join a club, any club, and a MAT is no different, there will be constraints. Some of those constraints are positive. They're constraints that you don't have to have your own HR policy, you don't have to have some of the management tools that you had independently, because they broadly speaking don't impact on pupil attainment and assessment, but they do impact on your time and your workload. And actually the maths being able to do those for you or take those away from you is a constraint, because you're not allowed to do those anymore, and pay is the same, and HR is the same, and performance management protocols have to be the same. But that releases you, and it provides you with huge opportunities to have more time to do other things related to teaching and learning and pupil outcomes, which are the frustrating parts of being a head. I've never heard a head complain that they have too much time to talk to children, look at books, look at data. They complain about their time was taken away from that by administrative stuff that actually they don't value very much. So yes, there are some constraints. In terms of curriculum freedom, which is one that comes up quite a lot, in our MAT, as I say, we throw it a professional challenge. If what you're doing is better than what the MAT is doing, then the MAT will do what you're doing, because it's got a better outcome for children. Conversely, if what the MAT does in an area has better outcomes than what you're doing as a school, then common sense would dictate that you want to do the thing that gives you the best outcomes for school. I think for special measures schools that come into a MAT, there's a revolution happens. For good schools that join a MAT, there's an evolution happens, and my experience is that if we put our literacy leads in a room from a good school and a number of schools and measure schools, and ask them to look at an area of work, of reading for example, they will come to a professional consensus, and actually the work of the MAT will become more and more together by professional consensus rather than by edict.